Hello and welcome to another edition of the Business Buzz. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman. I'm here with Chris Calandra, the co-host of the Business Buzz. And while we're taping now, we're about to start the All-Star game for Major League Baseball.
Yes.
And I'm sounding like an old fogey, but I'll tell you the truth. I think there's an increasing disconnect between sports, the fan, and the common person. And the fan, I mean the fanatic. Because, not the Philly fanatic, just the overall fanatic. Because I don't get it. When I was a kid, when I first got out of college, I remember Mike Schmidt was like the first $1 million player in like something like 1984. And I could relate to $1 million a year, $2 million a year. But I don't understand when you get like, Rodriguez, 26, 25. Isn't there a disconnect, Chris, between the person on the field, the athlete,
yes,
and the fan making $60,000 a year?
I think so, because couldn't you make the case that it's not just about the money, but they're as much business people, business personalities as they are athletes, where you go back into the 50s, 60s, 70s, and they were more athletes and less public business people.
Yeah, I just think the whole thing of rooting for someone, and also and I know that's never going to come back. I mean, that's nostalgia that's never going to happen. These people Ted Williams might have even lived around Boston. They were more hometown heroes, and that's just waxing nostalgically. That's never going to happen again. But the whole thing about, being, highly paid, and I even saw a show about Fenway Park, I believe it was on CBTV, and it was like all the schlock that goes into a game. It's a game. It's like 5 hours before the game. They got to rub the balls with like certain kind of thing to make it. It's like this whole, it's just this big production. Yeah. Just play the game.
So would you say you're less of a baseball fan now than you were 10 years ago and 20 years ago and
Absolutely,
so on?
no, there's no doubt in my mind, because I hate being used. I think you're like a willing dupe. You're out there, you go A-Rod. The guy's making 20, if I was making $26 million, and he's older, he's worried about his, legacy and everything else. But if I'm 26 years old, if I lost the playoffs, I'd be a little bummed. But am I going to cry? No. I'm making 26. I'm like, okay, well, it's a bummer. Okay, the fan's more bummed out than the player.
Well, I think that's true. I mean, the fans often bring more passion, the diehard fans, more passion than maybe many of the players do. But I know for me, and we've never talked about this, is the strike in 1994. Before 1994, I was a massive baseball fan.
Yes, same
I
here.
went to games all the time as a kid. My dad had tickets. I'd go as a kid, go to matinee games. Huge baseball fan. I have not paid for a baseball ticket since the 1994 strike.
No, and the same thing with me. And the only thing that got me back to baseball was a friend of mine, who will be named nameless. I used to come over to his house and have a beer, and he used to always watch the Red Sox.
Yeah.
It kind of got me reintroduced to it. Personally, I'd rather see the New Britain Rockcats. Because it doesn't make a difference to me. You're still watching a game.
Right.
The playoffs in baseball, I'm talking major, that's completely different. But to be in July watching the Red Sox, it's the same as watching the New Britain Rockcats. It doesn't really make a difference. If they lose, who cares?
But come on, be honest with the audience. Is it because you like the New Britain Red Sox, or because you don't want to spend $300 to go up to Boston?
Oh, no, absolutely no.
It's economics, too.
It's economics, but it's also my time to drive even if you gave me special deals they have, with a bus and it's, $50. It's like this whole pain in the to drive up to Fenway and park and to walk around the stadium, and it's a whole day. I'd rather just go to the Rockcats 3 hours, sit at 7 innings, and have the whole rest of my day.
Do you think it's still America's pastime?
That's an interesting subject. I don't know. I really don't know. I think football is, and I think they're all in danger of getting too big and bloated. And even football, older than you, and that's fine by me, because I'm thinking when I was a kid, and even before, I was really cognizant, like Jim Brown, before my time. But ESPN used to have these throwback games or, play the actual feed of the game like 66. And the guy, forgot his name, he died recently from NFL films.
Steve Sable.
Yeah, he had a great line. He goes, there's no doubt, because he had these canisters of films that he kind of just discovered, shot with World War II cameras, by the way, high def, not high def in today's world, but really like very well done in terms of the color reproduction, everything else. And he had these undiscovered, like, tons of these old, like, films that his father took, right? And he had this great line. He goes, no doubt players are faster, stronger, better, but there's something about that era, it was just cooler.
Yeah.
So I think what I'm getting at is the players are much better now. There's no doubt, like the Green Bay Packers of '67, they'd probably lose 55-0, okay? But the point is, you had real Dick Butkus. Now they create. It's all, I hate being manipulated. These guys, like some toothless idiot who's like a friggin' illiterate, and he's all of a sudden, bum. They make him into this media guy just because they need to create it. Back then, I guess it was the difference of they had people that were genuine characters that played into becoming a media character. Now they just get some guy who can't even speak 4 sentences, and he's a media character because it's all about big business. And just one other thing, it's like NFL, even though they're riding high on the hog right now, they have a problem because they've gotten a lot of suits in there, a lot of MBAs, and everything's become very corporate. You can't celebrate. You need to have white shoes with your socks have to be 3 to. You're getting way too complicated. It ain't that difficult. It's football, dude. No one cares if the sock is 2.5 or 3 inches. You're getting way too quick. And all these instant replays. I think it's a really good idea to have instant replays to a game. I grew up with no instant replays, okay? The game went on, life went on. And there was probably in a game 2 real calls, not even that. Maybe 1 call that would be controversial. A coach should have 2 instant replays, and if it doesn't go his way, then he loses a timeout. But how about instant replays after every touchdown? Now they're going to have it after every time someone sneezes. It's like, play the game.
Well, that's one of those things where technology might be doing as much harm as it is good because they want to get it right, which is understandable.
No, it's for gamblers. It's a corporort entity. Who
think
cares?
It has to do with gambling?
Some of it does. I don't gamble, so I don't really care. But a lot of it, I'm telling you the truth, life went on.
Yeah.
And someone, I remember was a kid, you watched instant replay. I remember I was a Colts fan, right? And they played the Patriots. And, someone blew the call. Grogan, the quarterback, was down. And they ruled him. And it's part of the whole thing of like, okay, fine, life goes on.
You're pulling Steve Grogan out there. That's pretty impressive.
I love Steve
But
Grogan.
it doesn't really accomplish anything because you still have calls that are debated by fans saying their team got, screwed, if you will, even after the instant replay. So it really doesn't solve anything anyway. You still have calls that don't go your way, that you feel should have gone your way.
It's gotten to everything's got to be perfect. It's like almost, you talk about, I'm kidding, but it's kind of like everyone gets a trophy. You can't have any little controversy.
Sure.
They're missing some of the essence of football.
Yes.
A lot of times, it didn't happen a lot, by the way. You think that it happened. Every call was, the guys were drinking and had no clue of what was going on. No, maybe 1 call a game would be a little controversial.
But those calls often are, at least in the NFL, of the greatest lore. I mean, legendary plays, the immaculate reception.
Yes, and that probably would have been overruled now.
It would have been studied for like an hour. But
who said, I mean, the commissioner of the NFL, right, he's in all these accolades. I think it was by default. Sometimes you're in the right place at the right time just because baseball's got problems.
Big problem.
Because baseball goes against how young people operate.
Yes.
They're multitasking. I remember, in terms of like just watching a movie. I had to play a movie for something. It was actually in a college class. I thought it'd be a good lesson in strategy. It was about D-Day. Okay. And I realized a really good lesson that kids are so pre-programmed for action.
Yeah.
You watch, and I love it. I don't watch a lot of this. You go to the Turner Movie Classic. I do not watch a lot of it.
Yeah.
But it's amazing how good those movies are. They would never make it nowadays because it's more thinking, it's more
Right.
dialogue. It's not like
More subtlety.
napalm strike every 5 minutes. But
So
I
what-
think
so what
I guess
D-Day
my question is,
what D-Day movie did you pop in?
it was actually Tom Selleck, and it was actually about Eisenhower planning D-Day, the strategy,
Okay.
all the repercussion. I tied it into it because I taught a course in game theory about, if something happens, what could be the possible ramifications.
Yeah.
It's kind of a zero-sum game. Very fascinating stuff. But anyway, the point I'm trying to make is I don't know what the ratings are for baseball. I know like the Yankees, Red Sox do real well, maybe the Phils and other teams. But I did hear that a lot of other teams aren't doing all that great.
I think
I
that's
don't know the answer, but I think we're like, I find it's kind of like hard to believe it'd be doing unbelievably great. But on the the flip side, the NBA, I heard, is not, they have a good television contract, but game attendance, except for New York and Boston, not all that great. In fact, I heard that sometimes they allow fans to go to lower sections,
Yeah.
so on TV it looks good. It's not embarrassing.
Sticking with the business element for a moment, I think it was Forbes recently came out with the top 20 highest valued sports franchises in the world, and the NFL made up 12 of the top 20. So
I think Dallas Cowboys are number one ahead of the Yankees now.
yeah, so even though NFL has some issues, they pale in comparison to baseball. And I think you're right. Now I have younger children, and Little League is really losing numbers. And this has been a long-term trend, but
You know
it's even
something that's interesting you say that?
accelerating.
Because I had a stepbrother who was like 8 years older than me. I remember watching his games.
Yeah.
And I played Little League, and I played with the next, I think, Alumni League, whatever it was after that. I'd have to say, even I was the beginning of the end. I believe when I saw his games, I'm sorry, they were better. It was like more people wanted to do it.
Yes.
I don't watch a Little League game now. I think it's pretty not all that great.
But you have other sports like soccer.
Soccer.
Has consistently been eating into it, especially at younger ages, and increasingly lacrosse, which is becoming very, very popular
You know something?
at younger age.
That would be a great opportunity. If I was a billionaire,
Yes.
I would start, and I would make it very East Coast to start. I would have it Boston, which would be huge, New York, Philadelphia, and maybe I think Virginia is pretty big, some city around there. I'd have a major league lacrosse team, league I would have.
Yeah, I think that probably
Because
will
it's
come.
action-packed, it's a great sport.
Action-packed. It's
Fantastic sport.
and physical, which Americans like, and it's athletic.
But you have a
so-
good point, Chris, is you look, it's market research 101. You look at what's going on to determine what will happen.
Absolutely.
And young kids aren't playing baseball. If
Baseball.
it wasn't for Hispanics and even some Asian talent coming in,
Sure.
and Hispanics have been huge for Major League Baseball, and also the interest perspective.
Yes.
I think we'd be in big trouble.
Absolutely, because when I grew up, you'd play pickup baseball games.
All
I
the
grew up in
time.
the city, but you'd go to the field and kids would go and you'd play. Sometimes you played half the diamond. Sometimes you'd play home run derby. Otherwise, you just practice infield, play games, whatever. You never see
you know what
unorganized kids playing baseball, but you'll see them playing soccer.
Absolutely. I think that's really important. When I was a kid, especially like elementary school up to like 6th grade, we played baseball every weekend. My best friend when I was a kid, it's funny, his neighbor, and we were friends with her. She had a yard that was perfect for playing. We just had catch as soon as we got home. I don't
never
think
happens.
kids play catch.
Never happens.
So my point is, look at this, from a marketing, this is a business buzz. Talent-wise, I think Major League Baseball will be okay because of the Hispanic influx. I'm not talking about
Sure.
internally. I'm talking about from the Dominican and other
Yes.
places. But I think from an interest perspective, it's still American kids, young people that are supporting. That's why Major League NFL is so popular.
Yes.
I think there's a deficit with the interest because I'm an older guy. When I tune in, I'll watch like a couple innings, but